Bleeding purple and gold. From the heart of Los Angeles, this is the LakersNation.com podcast with your host, Trevor Lane.
Hey everybody, welcome to today's show. As always, we are powered by CLNS Media and LakersNation.com, your home for everything Lakers. Tons going on in the world of the Los Angeles Lakers. As always, never a dull moment. And joining me today to break it all down is Jorge Sedano of ESPN. George, thanks so much for hopping on here, man.
You got it, bud. Anytime. Happy to do it.
So the Lakers, as of right now, they just demolished the Phoenix Suns. Nice to see them get a win that wasn't a close one. It was a blowout. The starters got to rest through most of the fourth quarter. And the Memphis Grizzlies lost. And with the combination of those two things, they are now in fifth place in the Western Conference at 14-9. At this stage in the season, is this about where you expected the Lakers to be right now?
Yeah, I mean, probably close to it. If you look at kind of their expected win percentage or win-loss situation, it was probably just about a game below this. So I think most people had them at about 10-10 to start the season. They were 11-9. And look, they've been the beneficiary of a bit of a soft schedule here. I know that Dallas is playing well, but if you really look at the way Dallas has played to this point in the season, Trevor, it's more along the lines of they've had a really soft schedule, and they've benefited from that really for the first 20 games for the most part. They've only faced, I think, I'd have to look back at the exact number, but definitely less than half the teams they've played are above 500 at this point, even in a crowded Western Conference where it seems like everybody is at least at 500 or better. But yeah, this is what you're supposed to do if you're the Lakers. You're supposed to beat the snot out of the Phoenix Suns of the world. You're a better team than the Dallas Mavericks, even as well as Luka Doncic is playing, because you have the best player on the planet. So yeah, that's a long way to go around to just tell you, yeah, give or take a game or so. I absolutely expect them to be in this range at this point.
Yeah, I mean, this is certainly what I was expecting as well. I assumed I didn't think they were going to lose twice to the Orlando Magic, but here we are.
No, I didn't. And I still think that's a bad loss, especially the one at home. Look, on the road, you can excuse that. I mean, it happens. But at home, that to me was the one that was inexcusable because in a tightly contested Western Conference, I had the Lakers as a 4 seed at 50 wins. That's the type of loss that you can go back to if they don't get home court advantage in the first round and you're like, oh, crap, Orlando. And you're yelling Nick Vucevic's name to the sky.
That's just it, man. I mean, you look at the West, you look at how crowded it is, and everybody's saying, hey, they have plenty of time. And that's true. They do. They've got plenty of time to develop chemistry and really go on a run. But at the same time, the wins at the beginning of the season count just as much as the ones at the end. So this could be a determining factor. And you mentioned Nikola Vucevic. That's been kind of their MO this season so far, is that they struggle against the rangy bigs, the guys who are versatile. And then you look at what's coming up this week. I mean, you've got 2 games against San Antonio, 1 on the road, and then a game in Memphis. So you're going to be playing against LaMarcus Aldridge and Marc Gasol. This schedule is going to get tougher. And as you mentioned, it's been soft, but it looks like there's a tough streak coming here.
Yeah, look, the Spurs are playing terrible basketball, though. They should at least split that right now. The Spurs defensively are a disaster. They've got no stoppers. They've got basically no continuity on that end either. I mean, they're pretty bad. I had their game. I did the Rockets-Spurs game on the sideline for ESPN on Friday night, and I was stunned at how bad they were. I figured coming off a loss where they got destroyed against the T-Wolves, I think just 2 nights before, I thought, okay, this will be one of those bounce-back games. It'll be competitive, even though the Rockets kind of have their full complement of players. And I bought into it more so because Dante Cunningham of the Spurs had actually said that's one of those games you want to remember, you want it to stick in your craw, et cetera, et cetera. And then they got waxed early on in that game against the Rockets. But yeah, the Spurs are a defensively challenged team, man. And I just don't think they have the right guys as far as instincts are concerned on defense. So that should at least be one win for the Lakers. Look, back-to-back scenarios are always tough. So, when you're playing home and home, in essence, it's not our true back-to-back, but when you're playing home and home against a team, it's certainly going to be difficult. But yeah, LaMarcus Aldridge, even though he doesn't stretch out to the three-point line, we all know he loves the long two. Yep. And him and DeMar DeRozan, they've got, mid-range madness going on there in San Antonio. But the guy they really need to watch out for is Marc Gasol. Marc Gasol, and he's a little dinged up, but he played tonight against Philadelphia. He's shooting like 40% from 3.
It's incredible.
Yeah, and look, he always had a good shot. But I'd stake the claim right now that he may not be as accomplished a player as his brother, but I'd make the case that individually he's a better player than his brother was because he was a defensive player of the year, because he's developed this range that even his brother couldn't develop to the three-point line, not with this kind of consistency. Marc Gasol has had an amazing metamorphosis. So that Memphis team with him and let's not forget the rookie, Jaren Jackson Jr., who has maybe as ugly a shot as anyone south of Lonzo, but he's gotten to go in at a decent enough clip where you have to respect it. And defensively, he's amazing. Steals, blocks, he's ridiculous. So they've got a really nice squad there in Memphis right now.
Yeah, and Jackson blew up for 36 points or whatever the other night. So that's not going to be – to me, it's weird when you look at this 3-game stretch that Memphis is the game where you're going, ooh, that's the tough one.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I don't think it's close,
yeah.
To be honest with you, because we know they defend the hell out of the ball. They're going to play hard. Their whole grit and grind mentality.
And they're going to slow it down.
Yeah, and absolutely. They're going to try to slow down the pace and play to their style. They did it tonight in Philly. They just didn't do it enough for a win, but they did slow Philly down a little bit. But, yeah, Conley is there, and, man – here's the thing, and I know we hear this all the time, right? He's super underrated. I mean, he is, though. I mean, it's hard to argue against that. I mean,
despite how long we've been saying that for. He's still we've been saying it for what, years and years now, and he's still underrated.
Right, because he hasn't made an all-star team in the West, which is just ridiculously loaded with point guards. But he is an excellent defender. He just knows how to control the pace. He knows when to score, when to distribute. He's just a really smart player. And clearly he has an unbelievable rapport with Marc Gasol on both ends of the floor. So, they've got, the young kid and they're trying to find the right guys to space the floor around them. But I like what they're doing. I mean, I got to be honest. I didn't think they'd be a playoff team. But before the season, I said, look, that team can be anywhere from like 42 to 45 wins, and it wouldn't surprise me. And I think they're absolutely in that range right now, if not more, as we speak.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny when you look at the schedule. So when we looked back in August and we looked at the schedule and you were looking at December, you went, okay, well, they've got a road trip in the middle of December. Then, of course, you got the big matchup against Golden State. But you looked at it and you went, oh, okay, they've got Memphis on December 8th. There's a win there. And then you go, okay, after Golden State, they've got Sacramento, the Clippers, and Sacramento. There's 3 more wins there to close out the month. Now that the season started, I don't think any of those are the case by far. I mean, those aren't gimmies at all in the West.
No, absolutely not.
I mean, obviously not the Clippers. They're sitting in first.
Yeah, I mean, the Clippers, I was kind of watching their game. I was flipping back and forth from the football game to their game with Dallas right now. And they were losing when I was checking earlier. Yeah, they're still down with 5 minutes to go here. But, yeah, look, man, there's no gimme games in the Western Conference. There's 14 teams that you can legitimately make a case for that might make the playoffs. Well, maybe 13, because I'm not buying into Sacramento just yet, even though they've clearly made real advances. Vlade, of all people, who knew, considering as much as we mocked him as a collective group on NBA Twitter. And then, of course, the East, right? The East has their top 5 teams. Look, a team like Miami just beat Utah and the Pelicans back-to-back. I don't think they're going to be a good team, but I think that in the East they can be a 7 or an 8 seed. So, Spoelstra's going to have them ready night in and night out. So they're not a gimme game.
Nope.
Washington, I think, can, they've got the talent, right? Like it's a matter of can they get this thing rolling again. But even in the East, really, you're just looking at the bottom 4 or 5 teams that are just terrible. Cleveland, Chicago, Atlanta, the Knicks. Those teams are not going to even try hard, it feels like most nights. Anyone else is at least going to give you a game because they're going to try. And teams that try in this league, because not everyone does, that'll get you in most games, I think, in this sport through an 82-game season. Oh,
yeah. If you're going up against a professional NBA team that is cohesive, they're on the same page, they are a threat. I mean, you look at a team like the Wizards, even though they've had all this internal strife, they've also been around for a long time, and that's a team that could give you a game on any given Wednesday in the NBA. Same thing with Miami. They've got all these different teams out there that could give you a good run. And I think this month and this stretch is going to be a really good test for the Lakers to see where they're truly at, because they're not going to have those easy games to kind of feast on. Instead, they're going to be going up against a tough opponent every single night. And you know about this dynamic a little bit, from covering LeBron in Miami and everything. Every single time when you play one of these teams, and we've seen this already with the Lakers, you're going to get their best shot every single night because LeBron James is on the other team and they know all the national attention is going to be on that game.
Listen, when I covered LeBron and every day prior to him arriving in Los Angeles, that team, that was a whole different level of nonsense, right? Like the way they got together, everyone hated them. They were the villains. It was everyone's game 7. I would say, really, I mean, for the entire 4 years, it was treated that way, where they came to town and the opposing fans and teams, I mean, it was their moment and they wanted to do everything they could to beat them. Now, as the 4 years progressed, it felt like there were a lot more people not just there to boo them and hate on them, but to kind of marvel at how great they were. And I think the Lakers will eventually get there. It'll be interesting to see, though, how they get there, because I don't think, and I've been saying this really since the offseason when LeBron got here, I don't think it's going to be this group that you're seeing right now. There may be a few guys that carry over, but I don't think it's going to be the majority of them.
We're going to take a quick break so we can talk about Fanatics. Guys, we are so thrilled to have Fanatics as one of our sponsors today. They are the world's largest collection of officially licensed fan gear from all the leagues, teams, and players you love. They have the best selection, including trusted brands like Nike and Jordan Brand, exclusive designs by Fanatics, and autographed collectibles from today's biggest stars. One of my favorite things is their jersey assurance program. If you buy a player jersey and that player is traded within 90 days, Fanatics will replace your jersey with another player from your favorite team or your favorite player's jersey with their new team. Comes in handy given how crazy the NBA can be around the trade deadline. They have hundreds of Lakers products, including Nike and Fanatics branded fast break jerseys for LeBron James and all your other favorite Lakers. Join Fanatics Rewards today and earn fan cash on every purchase. You can support our podcast, which we certainly appreciate, and get free shipping on your order through December 31st by shopping fanatics.com/LakersNation. Again, go check them out, fanatics.com/LakersNation. Get all the Lakers gear that you need for the holidays and support our show, fanatics.com/LakersNation. Yeah, you know what, George, let's get into that, because it was right before the season started that you had myself and Pete Zayas and Anthony Irwin and Harrison Fagan. We all came over to ESPN studios, and you were kind enough to have us on your show, and we chatted for a while. And at that time, you were convinced that Anthony Davis is going to be a Laker at some point, that it is set in motion, that it's going to happen. And we've said this is a audition season for guys like Kyle Kuzma and Lonzo Ball and Brandon Ingram that could be shipped out eventually. Do you still feel the same way? Do you still feel like the Anthony Davis to LA thing is going to happen?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't think there's any question. Look, my whole reasoning was he switched agents. You don't just switch agents to stay where you're at. Like that makes no sense. Like if you're content with what's going on, then why are you going to switch agents? That goes for anyone that is in an industry that needs an agent. That's how that works. Now, I know that there's been discussions that, well, maybe it's about the stuff beyond basketball, because clearly Clutch has done a lot of stuff with Spring Hill Entertainment, and LeBron's got a show basically everywhere. It seems like HBO, Showtime, NBC, you name it, he's got it. So I think that maybe that has something to do with it. But look, man, why are you going to have an agency if you're not going to reap the benefits of having that agency for LeBron James, right? And I just think that when I was where was I that I did a New Orleans game? I was in Minnesota a couple of weeks ago, and I told this story on radio that, when we do these games, the coaches, we have a few minutes with each of them, and we talk to them kind of on the record, off the record about stuff. And then as we were kind of just hanging out in our little room in the arena in Minnesota, Del Demps just came by to say hello. And he didn't really say anything other than man, everything's great. We love it. We're doing everything. We love Anthony. We love our team, blah, blah. But it was just like a salesman kind of pitch. It felt like he's
trying to talk himself into it almost.
Well, he was trying to talk us into it.
And everything's great.
Fine. Yeah. And look, I don't want to disparage Dell, because I guess if I were him, I'd maybe I'd do the same thing, right? Because all everyone talks about is how Anthony Davis is going to leave New Orleans. And if you have ESPN doing one of your games, it's probably cool to jump in there and just kind of talk to the guys who are doing the broadcast and let them know everything seems to be fine. Forget about all this noise you hear. So, he didn't really tell us anything other than, hey, everything's great, man. Just wanted to say hello. We're really excited about our team this year after what we did last year, blah, blah, blah. It was literally 2 minutes. But I found it odd because, I've only been doing this for a couple of years now. This is my second season doing sidelines. I asked the guys, and I'm like, how many times the GM coming into the room to talk? And they're like, first time for us. And I was like, okay, because look, you can run into them in the hallway or whatever and have those conversations or even pregame on the court or whatever. But it was weird, right? It just was something that was not something that was the norm. So that just kind of raised my antennas even more after what I've been thinking, because why go out of your way to try to tell people everything's great? It's kind of like that meme of the dog sitting there in the room with everything on fire.
This is fine.
This is fine.
Right. Yeah.
Right, yeah. It felt like that. And look, man, I hope for Dell's sake that Anthony does stay there, because it would be disastrous for that franchise if you lose a player like that. I saw what Cleveland went through when LeBron left, and I think Anthony is an alien, basically. Like, you only get one of those in a generation, I think. So I do think it would be catastrophic for that franchise, and you don't want to see that happen. But you know what? If he happens to come to LA, I'm all about me and self-preservation, so that makes our lives a lot easier. So I root for me more than I'd root for Dell. But I would feel bad for New Orleans as a city, though, if they lost a guy like that. But yeah, I still think Anthony Davis is going to be a Laker. And I'm not alone, clearly. Jared Jack's tweeting that him and KD are coming.
I saw that.
So, and that was even after I said it. Maybe he was listening to the pod that we
did. He must have been. So that would be, I don't even know how that will be mathematically possible to get both Anthony Davis and Kevin Durant. I'm sure there's a way, and I'm sure Rob Pelinka is smart enough to figure it out if there is. But let's talk about these young guys, because we've said, hey, this is their chance. This is their opportunity to show they can be part of this team moving forward. But at the same time, if we're talking about Anthony Davis and we're talking about these other pieces, they're also being showcased for potential trades. So what's your take on the young players at this point? Is there anybody that you think is really stepping up and proving themselves to be a guy that can play with LeBron James, or somebody who's just showing that they can be a really good player and potentially be a trade chip in the future?
Look, clearly Kuzma and Hart have played well with LeBron. Mm-hmm. I think that's fairly obvious. If you look at, and I haven't looked at it today, but I looked at it, I think, Thursday. The Lakers lineups, I think the second lineup as far as minutes was concerned was basically take Ingram out, put Hart in with the starting group. And I think they were plus 11 at that point. Whereas the starting unit, when I looked at it that day, was like plus 2, which isn't obviously not bad, but it's not ideal. So, look, they need Brandon Ingram to be the centerpiece of any deal for someone of the ilk of Anthony Davis. So they need him to play well. Look, in a perfect world, you don't need Anthony Davis because Brandon Ingram is balling and he's a 20-point scorer and he can be the number 2 or number 3 piece on a championship team. But right now, I don't think he's shown the consistency for me to buy into that just yet.
Right.
I think that Brandon Ingram has shown flashes, and consistent flashes is not something that I've seen enough of, right? He had, at the end of his rookie season, I thought he had a decent stretch towards the end. Obviously, he had that, what was it? It was a several-week stretch last season, kind of February-ish.
Right, February.
Where he just blew up, particularly when Lonzo was out. He was incredible. I think he had like a 62% true shooting percentage or something insane. Ridiculous like that.
He put up 18, 5, and 5. And I mean, it was just, he wasn't missing anything. I mean, even threes, he was hitting like 50% from 3. It was nuts.
Yeah, it was crazy. So I think that what I've said on the radio show, 3:30 to 7 on ESPN LA 710, shameless plug, is that I even said, I get why maybe you wouldn't want to make him the sixth man, because, you mess with his head maybe or something like that. But you got to at least scatter the minutes, because it's so obvious that when he's not on the floor with LeBron, that he gets to be him again, that it makes all the sense in the world. First of all, your team will be better. I think, for it, because clearly you take him out and put Hart in with that starting lineup, with the first substitution a few minutes in. We've seen that particular lineup with Hart excels. And then you give Brandon me time, okay? Mm-hmm. And look, I know that there's people out there who say, look, Dwayne Wade took a long time to kind of figure it out with LeBron. Sure, but Dwayne Wade was a 27, 28-year-old superstar who had been in the league for, 4 years, 5 years at that point, maybe more? No, actually, no. Yeah, it was going into his 7th season. So, he'd have been a finals MVP. He was going to be able to figure that out. Like, you had faith that was going to happen. This kid's only 21. You're going to have to ease along the transition for him. And if you give him Brandon time, I think that when you need him at the end of games to play alongside LeBron, his confidence will be high enough where it won't be as big a deal to play with him for the last 6 minutes of the game. I think if you get him in that kind of flow where he knows he's got his own time to kind of do his own thing, and then he can hone in on those last 6 minutes to play with LeBron, I think it's just easier than trying to figure it out for the majority of the game.
Yeah, I think that's the ideal scenario, and I agree with you. I think you don't take him out of the starting lineup. I think that you find ways to at least start him and then bring him out quickly and quietly and kind of insert Josh Hart, because Hart's shooting has been so key for that unit. But if you watch Ingram, it's like as soon as LeBron goes out, the switch gets flipped, and suddenly Brandon Ingram he'll make like 3 great plays in a row. He's driving to the basket, doing all this stuff. And you're like, well, where was that a few minutes ago? It's incredible. And ultimately, I think if Ingram wants to stick around long term, he's got to figure out a way to play alongside LeBron James. But for the time being, if the Lakers want to keep his trade value high, they need to figure out some way to stagger those minutes moving forward. And I'm wondering if the return of Rajon Rondo is going to hinder that at all, possibly take the ball out of Ingram's hands with that second unit where he's been taking over as the point guard.
Yeah, I do think that's another thing. Like, I think we talked about it in the pod we did early in the season at our studio, which was I didn't love any of these signings really outside of JaVale. And I did like Lance because I think you need a little crazy on the team. But the Rondo thing, look, high IQ, yes, no question. I know that's what LeBron was looking for, and he brings a certain toughness or whatever. But guys like him, guys like Lance, guys like even JaVale, who's played fine, but we'll exclude him from this conversation, Beasley, whoever, those guys, for the most part, are going to have an expectation of playing time. And I didn't want it to come at the expense of the young guys. And I think that you just brought that up. What's it going to look like when Rondo gets back? How does that affect Brandon and his ability to control the pace and have the ball in his hands? All those are things that I worry about with this particular group. And if you're a Laker fan, you should be worried about it because, as you pointed out, it's not just about, hey, let's see if Brandon can be part of the future core. Sure, that'd be great. But if you really want to get this crazy super team, you need him to be good anyway, because you need another team to buy into the fact that he can be a star. Now, the splits may be enough for some teams, but I doubt it. Look, GMs are really smart now in the NBA. The days of getting swindled in deals, it just doesn't happen as often anymore. Of course, there's outliers, but guys are way too smart for this stuff now. The guys that are running these front offices.
Guys, we're going to pause for just one moment to talk about your home Wi-Fi and Eero. So I had a really big problem in my house. I have a 2-story home, and the problem that I ran into was that certain areas of my home would have no Wi-Fi coverage. And in today's world, that's just not acceptable. So I turned to Eero for a solution, and it has been fantastic. They offer a distributed system. That means that you can have every corner of your home have Wi-Fi coverage, and it only takes a few minutes to set up. All you have to do is download the Eero app on your iOS or Android device, and it will walk you through each step of the process. It is super quick, super easy, painless. It seriously took me maybe 5 minutes to set up, and that was it, and I was done. Current Wi-Fi routers can be really tough to manage and optimize. The Eero app lets you do that, manage your entire network from the palm of your hand. I had guests in town last weekend, and they were able to come in and connect to my system. I didn't have to tell them my password or anything. Right through the Eero app, it told me, hey, somebody's trying to connect. Do you want to let them connect? I was able to connect them. It was very simple, very easy, and the setup was so easy. I was so appreciative of that because that meant I had more time to spend playing with my kid and hanging out with my wife and doing all the other things that I like to do instead of fumbling through an entire setup of a brand new system. Eero made it so easy to set up their main system as well as the beacons in different rooms in my home. And now my entire house has fantastic Wi-Fi coverage. They also offer great customer support. So if you ever run into any problems at all, they take care of it. They are right there to help you every step of the way. But really, it's so simple. I seriously doubt you're going to have any problem setting this up. It's a tremendous system. It really, really is super easy. And they also have something called Eero Plus. And what this does is it provides simple, reliable security that defends all of your home's devices against a growing number of threats like malware, spyware, phishing attacks, as well as unsuitable content, which as a parent, I'm super concerned about. The combination of Eero with Eero Plus provides complete protection for your network and all the devices and the people who use them as they connect to the internet. Super, super important. So guys, give it a shot. If you've got those spots in your home where the Wi-Fi signal just isn't the best, Eero can solve that. Eero can make your whole home have excellent Wi-Fi coverage. All right, go check them out. And here's maybe the best part. Just because you're listening to this show, you get a special deal. All right, all you have to do is go to Eero.com/nation. Again, Eero.com/nation. You'll never have to think about your Wi-Fi again, and you get $100 off the Eero base unit and 2 beacons, plus a year of Eero Plus. All of that, all you have to do is go to Eero.com/nation and at checkout, enter the promo code NATION. Again, Eero.com/nation, enter that promo code NATION. Go check it out, guys. Made a huge difference in my home. I'm sure it will in yours too. Yeah, and I mean, if you look at what's happened with Brandon Ingram taking over that second unit, so far he's done a decent job at running the point. But Rajon Rondo, I mean, he's said all the right things, done most of the right things. As long as he's not playing the Houston Rockets, then he's done and said all the right things right now. But still, I wonder when push comes to shove, and it's February. And things are starting to get, the season starts to get long and tiresome and all of that. We hit the dog days of the season. At what point do these veteran players start to play for themselves? These guys are all on 1-year deals. They're all playing for their next contract. I'm wondering if there's going to be any friction there at that point in the season, or is LeBron's presence enough to kind of hold it all together?
Man, it'll be fascinating to see. I don't have the answer to that clearly, but I do think that's part of the theater that we're going to be watching as we kind of move forward here, because you're right. That's absolutely the way guys think. They think I need to get mine because I want 1 more year or 2 more years or whatever amount of years I can get. Look, I went to NBA's stat page and just see if they've updated their stats. And it looks like they have. So the starting unit, 0. Their net rating is 0.0. They are 0. Like, it's amazing. Like that's not ideal, man. You can't have that. And that group I mentioned that where you insert Hart instead of Ingram is 11. So I think that, again, it's just those are some of the things you have to look at now. And we're no longer in small sample size ranges, right? Because we're a quarter of the way through the season now. These are big enough samples to make these determinations. Now, maybe you'd want more. Sure, I'd agree. But as we kind of talked about to start the whole thing, in the West, you've got a little time to figure it out, but not as much as you think, because there's just going to be a logjam, basically. Once the Warriors get healthy, I think they'll separate themselves. But basically from 2 to 12 probably is going to be separated by 5 games, is my guess.
Yeah, and that's just the insanity of people thought the West was nuts last year. This year is going to take it to a whole new level, because you have every team basically except for one that legitimately feels like they should be in the playoffs and is probably good enough to make the playoffs if they were in the other conference. I mean, even the Sacramento Kings, I think, are playing well enough, and the Dallas Mavericks are playing well enough to where they're a playoff team in the other conference. So this is going to be absolutely bonkers. I think maybe because of that, the win totals aren't quite as high as they were last season for the playoff teams, because they're playing each other so much and there's so much competition there. So maybe you'll see that, but I wouldn't take that as a sign that the West is any weaker. It's just deeper this year.
100%. I agree. Again, And even Sacramento, who I told you I'm not a huge believer in right now, they've had, I think, the second or third toughest schedule, third toughest behind Utah and Boston to start the season. So maybe they are this good, and I'm just using, my own biases against them because they're the Sacramento Kings. But they're playing good basketball for sure.
They are, and I kind of hope for them. I mean, I know the Lakers have the old rivalry from the early 2000s with the Kings and everything, but I mean, I kind of hope that they do turn things around because you've seen that franchise just suffer for so long. Guys, we're going to pause for one moment because I need to tell you about this new time-saving trick. I got my wife's contact lens prescription renewed while sitting on my couch yesterday. We both sat there in under 5 minutes using an awesome new app called Simple Contacts. We got them renewed. Anyone who wears contact lenses needs to know about this. Simple Contacts lets you renew your prescription and reorder your brand of lenses from anywhere in minutes through an online vision test. It's designed by doctors and every test is reviewed by a doctor, so they're literally bringing the doctor's office into your home. My wife hated having to go get her prescription renewed for her contact lenses, and this was so easy. She was so appreciative. It was great to see the whole experience be such a weight lift off of her shoulders. And their contact lens prices are unbeatable. The vision test is only $20 and shipping is free. Best of all, my listeners get $20 off their first Simple Contacts order with the promo code LakersNation. Try it yourself, save $20 on your lenses by going to simplecontacts.com/LakersNation or entering the code LakersNation at checkout. I want to mention this isn't a replacement for your periodic full eye health exam. You still need those occasionally, but it is the most convenient way to renew a prescription and reorder your contacts if your vision hasn't changed. Again, get $20 off at simplecontacts.com/LakersNation or just enter the code LakersNation at checkout. Save time, save money, save yourself a headache. Go check it out. Simple Contacts. George, let's talk about this before you get out here and head off to a nice family dinner. This is LeBron's first year in Los Angeles. This is one of the first times we've seen him really with a group this young around him. He's kind of been doing this thing where he lets the young kids do their thing and tries to set them up. He almost looks like a coach out there on the floor, the way he's playing and just kind of just giving them the ball and kind of stepping aside and letting them do their thing. And then when it comes time to really get serious, then he takes over. Are you shocked at all by this approach, by how laid back he's been during certain portions of the game? Or is this just LeBron James being LeBron James?
I think it's a little bit of all of it. Okay. It is LeBron James being LeBron James because LeBron is the ultimate playmaker, right? He loves to set his guys up. So I'm not surprised by that. I am not surprised even more so because I think he does want these guys to gain confidence for a number of reasons, right? A myriad of reasons. One, he wants to win games. This notion that he's still not competitive anymore because he moved to LA and he's making TV shows and movies or whatever the hell is just absurd. And I think part of it is what we discussed, right? He knows if some of these guys ball out, he may get better teammates in exchange for them. It's not something that he's shied away from in the past. Andrew Wiggins, right? That was a guy that we thought was going to be on Cleveland. Boom, here comes Kevin Love, right? So like we've talked about with Anthony Davis or whether it's in free agency or whatever, I think that all of those things run through his head. LeBron, Trevor, plays chess while everyone is playing checkers, not just on the floor when it comes to basketball, but when it comes to the stuff outside of the game and the way he kind of wants his teams to look like. He's not running the show per se, but he has a lot of influence in how things work. And he puts pressure on franchises, as he should, being the best player in the game. So there is an inherent pressure when you have that guy there on your team. I am surprised, though, at the type of patience he's shown. So the day that he made the comment, right, where he said, you don't want to see me when I'm, when I lose my patience or whatever, you don't want to be around me. Mm-hmm. I remember going on the radio the next day and I was laughing. And I had this conversation with Trudell. Mike Trudell is the Lakers sideline reporter who does work with us at ESPN. And he was my guest co-host that day. He's like, it's something, but of course he'd be mad or whatever. They're 2-5 or whatever it was at the time, 3-5. And then Andy Kamenetsky was also there. And he's like, oh, you're making too much of a big deal out of this. This is nothing. And I'm like, listen, man, I speak LeBron, so I know how passive aggressive this gets. And that wasn't even really passive aggressive. That was kind of like aggressive. Yeah,
that was pretty obvious there.
Yeah. And so like, I do think that there's something to that, and he's not going to tolerate under 500 for too long. And then we come to find out, a couple weeks later, after they kind of right the ship a little bit, he tells Chris Haynes that was the exact moment where he was ready to crack. So yeah, look, LeBron does not have a lot of patience. That's been documented. Anyone who's been around him for any amount of time understands that. That's just who he is. And great people like that, they don't have a ton of patience. I've worked with Pat Riley for a long time covering him. He doesn't have a lot of patience. Even at his, as he's gotten older and one of those guys that kind of loves to live life a little more than maybe he used to, he's still not a patient dude. LeBron is that guy. Dwayne Wade, I've covered him for years, not a patient guy. Like, they want to win. You covered Kobe Bryant for a long time. Yep. I did, in and out as a helicopter type guy occasionally, but been around him enough to clearly know that. Any guy who's great doesn't have a ton of patience. And that's not just a sports thing. So whenever I saw him on Spectrum one time talking to Allie Clifton, and he was talking patience, and she literally started laughing in his face.
That's right.
And he's like, what do you mean, Allie? What are you laughing at? And she's like, come on. I had Damon Jones on the other day on the radio show. Ramona Shelburne was my guest co-host, and we had Damon Jones on, who was LeBron's teammate in Cleveland the first time and one of the assistant coaches when they won the championship. And I said to him, Damon, so there's been a lot of talk about LeBron and his patience. I couldn't even get another word out. And he started cracking up on the radio, like legitimately just cackling out loud. And I'm like, what are you laughing at? And he's like, come on, man. We all know he's got no patience. And that's just the thing. So to me, the fact that he's been able to contain that is by far the most surprising thing. And look, a credit to him. He's 34 years old, or will be here very shortly, in less than a month now. Maybe he's grown some, where he's realized, I know what I've gotten myself into. So kudos to him for that, because that's something I didn't expect from him. And it's been a pleasant surprise. Not to say that it won't blow up in everyone's face at some point during the season if they have another rough patch.
Probably right before the trade deadline.
Right. But for now, yeah, because they are calculated in that sense. And, when you hear that word, it has a negative connotation, but I don't mean it that way. I almost mean it in a revelatory type way, right? Like, man, I look up to the fact that you are calculated like that. You know when to push the buttons and get people rattled. And he does do that. He did it in Cleveland a ton of times. And, both times he was there basically, but the second time specifically. So I think that he understands when he can push buttons and when he doesn't have to push buttons. And he's gotten better at that with age, it seems like, here with the Lakers. But yeah, like that to me is the thing. There's no way I would have thought that he wouldn't have blown up after that 2-5 start, and he kind of bit his lip.
Yeah, I mean, it's been impressive how patient he's been with these young guys. Now, I mean, you say, hey, he's playing chess while everybody else is playing checkers, and he's sort of this guy that can make things move behind the scenes and all of that. So I would assume then from what you're saying that you would buy into this rumor that we heard over the last few weeks that it was LeBron calling old buddy James Jones and calling in a favor to get Tyson Chandler out of Phoenix.
Yeah, man, of course. I was in Phoenix for the first game of the season. On ESPN, we had Dallas. We had Luka versus Ayton, and which really didn't turn into that matchup because poor Luka got into foul trouble. But I talked to JJ. I know JJ from my days in Miami. And, we just talked about him getting the job. But yeah, him and LeBron are still really tight. And look, at that point, that wasn't even a consideration. But we just talked about guys. Like, we talked to this guy, that guy. Yeah, he talks to LeBron still. Of course he does. Him and LeBron were great teammates together in Miami. They were great teammates in Cleveland. LeBron brought James Jones over and Mike Miller over to help kind of implement a culture there, like they had, a more business-like culture like they had when they were in military school with Pat Riley. And that's just it. So those guys are super duper tight. So yes, even though none of them will ever admit that on the record, at least probably not while LeBron is active, there's no question in my mind that that's the case. And Hopefully aggregators don't take that out of context. I'm simply speculating on that. But, I'm connecting dots. All right. Let's just do it that way.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. I think that there's probably something there. I mean, where there's smoke, there's fire. And honestly, for Lakers fans, that's a good thing, especially when, just to bring it all full circle here, when Anthony Davis is now sharing an agency with LeBron James.
Yeah. And Trevor, look, here's the other thing. If you're James Jones, who's the interim GM or whatever he is and wants to become the real GM of the Phoenix Suns, that's a good look for veteran players too, that are around the league. They'll say, oh, you know what? If things aren't working out and I need a buyout, JJ will take care of it, and he'll take care of it professionally, in a professional manner, and get me to a good spot. And he'll take care of me. Because, look, everyone knows this is a business and it doesn't always work out. I think particularly veteran guys at the end of their careers all know that. So I think it's a good look for James Jones just on that end too, which I don't think enough people are talking about. Clearly, everyone's talking about the Lakers aspect and LeBron. But for him, as a guy who wants to be a GM for a long time in this league, I do think that goes a long way with agents and veteran players and the like. And I'm not surprised because, again, James was a great teammate. James was a bigwig in the Players Association. So guys around the league respect James Jones.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a savvy move. It's a move that builds a positive reputation in the NBA community for James Jones. So yeah, I mean, he's getting something out of it. The Suns are getting something out of it by saving a little bit of money. And of course, maybe it was LeBron James pulling a few strings in order to bring Tyson Chandler to LA. And now LA is playing whole different brand of basketball because they've got a second legit center they can turn to. George, I've taken up more than enough of your time at this point. Thank you so much for coming on here and joining me. Really appreciate it.
Trevor, you got it, buddy. Anytime. You let me know. I'll be here.
Awesome, man. Thank you very much. And guys, make sure you check out the Sedano Show, 3:30 to 7 on ESPN 710. George Sedano, always a wonderful guy to have on and chat with. Thank you, everybody, for listening today. We'll be back next week with an all-new show. And make sure you guys are checking out the Lakers Nation post-game show that I'm hosting on Facebook Live right after each game. It's a ton of fun, so go check it out. And head over to LakersNation.com, your home for everything Lakers. Till next time, see ya.